So today's video is a very simple concept. We're going to look at cycles. We're going to talk about, is this the last big one, where maybe we get life-changing gains for the last time. But cycles are cycles, right? If you're new to the channel, subscribe. It makes a massive difference. Leave a like and let me know what you think in the comment box. Let me know exactly, do you think we're going to get any more cycles? Put it that way, right? These are the past data in a way of like previous bull markets. Now, this is just the total market cap. And the premise of this, and this is all on the long logarithmic scale, this is on normal, right? We want to talk about something pretty interesting, right? And this is 2017 bull cycle, the 2020, 2021, and this is where we are currently, right? Now, this is the problem that we have in the market. What's going to happen next, right? If we all knew that, we'd all be millionaires, right? Now, the premise of this is kind of obvious, and we need to talk about it. Sorry. Will we make loads of money in the future? And we've got to talk about diminishing returns. We've got to talk about cycle narrative and altcoins and Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana. What's going to be the most superior in the future? We don't know, right? And I think that is important. So we're going to look at what's actually happening right now today, and we're going to look at what's happening in the past. And in terms of where we are currently in the market cycle. So don't just bugger off because you think this is a weird idea. But I want you to get into the frame of mind that maybe, just maybe, that your decision making that you do in the next 12 months could be pivotal. But I want to remember you and remind you, I should have said, was that the world of investing is about time. And no one's going to get rich quick, but it doesn't matter if this is the last big boy cycle in terms of returns. People are going to look at percentages, and we'll look at those. Let's look at what's happening right now. So in terms of this, an analyst's thought in terms of wrecked capital, talking about how the market's peaked at certain points post-halving, right? So if we're going to repeat that, it would indicate a potential run to September, October 2025. It gives us about a year, right? I've talked about this before, roughly around, a year after halving, between 400 days and stuff like that, where it's looking like June time. But we don't know when the time's going to finish. Something could go wrong tomorrow and kaput, right? So as much as I love the cycle narrative and talk about like stuff like this, it's very, very important to note that time frames are very, very important. And they don't just go to the top of cycles. You've got to remember exit liquidity. Sorry, we've got to say it. If you've made enough money, you are going to find a point to get out. And when we talk about diminishing returns, you can see it already on this chart in terms of how aggressive the moves have been in terms of the past versus today. And they are going to be different for obvious sake, right? And then when we start talking about another bit of analysis from the same account, where we are today, we might be going into that massive squirt to the upside, which would indicate potential 6, 12, however many months. It might be very, very interesting. And I know a lot of people say, oh, it's easy mode, but it isn't. It really isn't, because you will get caught out. There will be FOMO. There'll be emotions that you'll never, ever, ever tap into. And even today, we can see on the Explore page here on X, Ethereum/BTC hits a 3-year low. It's like everything's kind of in tune with what we're expecting. High dominance. Certain BTC pairs are horrendous, right? And we're at the point of thinking, well, what if we don't run? What if that is it? But in terms of the analysis, and I've been looking at this as well, we've had a change of character of broken structure. It's looking good. Now this channel area is now acting as levels of support. Right now, fingers crossed, it could be great. And then, as I said, people are like, oh, but the cycle's not happening. We're not even in. We are. You just can't see it for the trees. Can't see it wood for trees. But this is where we are. And this brings me to the idea of, what if we don't go that far? Because in a matter of fact, percentage-wise, no. In terms of value, yeah. Because that value proposition is going to be different. When you've got, say, a $60,000 Bitcoin doing 100%, it's 120K. Ooh, it's a mental move. But people don't see it like that in terms of returns. And we've already had a big run anyways. From the low to where we are right now, we've gone for $15,000. But we may not get anywhere near the heights that people are expecting. But over time, we will. Bear with me. So what if we do? Let me just kind of showcase this in a little bit of a groovy version. What if we do just kind of squirt a little bit up to these points and then like do that? Or, it just depends on how we're looking at it. The reality is, though, we're always going to get to a point where Bitcoin will struggle to get higher. It's just supply, demand, liquidity, then you've got the hash rate situation, all that kind of stuff, right? It just depends where the market takes us. But at the end of the day, we are kind of on form. We are in the groove of it, which is good. But do we go in between the blue and the green? Do we go below? Do we go much higher? Who knows? We just don't know. But this is obviously Bitcoin, so it's probably unlikely to go to these stupid levels because it's just the way it is, right? However, that's my opinion, of course. So, little facts of life, kind of, regarding the ETF. The ETFs are doing very well. I've mentioned this before on my X account, and as I say, feel free to subscribe to that if you want to listen to me get absolutely rinsed by people. It's looking good. But will this eventually, over time, offer control? Maybe. And people do say, well, maybe Bitcoin already is suppressed in terms of the volume going through it. And then we're going to eventually go to the point of comparing it like the S&P 500 and how that kind of changed. The reality is here, money is coming in. Retail mania will probably come in at some point and we will get that squirt. But there's only so many times we can rely on that. There's only so many times that the market will go into a flush and people will get very, very interested in it and then it will flush people out, which is usually pretty common. The big green dildo, as I say, often brings people to the market. When Bitcoin breaks its all-time high, which I think will happen in the next couple of weeks at least, in terms of the rally, what we seem to be getting right now, fingers crossed, I might be wrong, it will bring people in. And then we'll start seeing Solana doing well. Ethereum may start recovering. Meme coins may take off and people will be interested in the other altcoins. But that doesn't mean it's going to be the last ever cycle, does it? No. It just means that there's probably going to be a lot more creative, more skeptical investor coming to the market because so many people get wrecked in it. That's kind of the problem, which brings me on to obviously this. BlackRock will want to make it as stable as possible. Let's be honest. BlackRock, Fidelity, they don't want to create those big, massive bear markets, those big, massive surges in bull markets. Yes, you're going to have a nice annual growth rate, which we'll talk about in a second, but would you want to be like a BlackRock investor when you know that Bitcoin might fall 70% randomly when the S&P does not? Probably not. So regarding the obvious in the room here, we have annualized or quarterly returns, right? And you can see the higher up we go, the less ballsy the percentages go. You can see that from 2017, you got some ridiculous numbers. And you do have some crazy numbers in the bull markets, but those may well diminish a lot. Like realistically, they probably will. Even when you look at Ethereum, you can see the diminishing side of it. The problem we have, as I say, it's the diminishing side. But what is good and highlighted very, very clear is some of these red numbers are nowhere near as crazy as they used to be neither. So we start to see less and less of the red, more of the green. So maybe we are just stabilizing a little bit and people are looking at Bitcoin as a more mature investment. Another thing here as well, not to rock the boat essentially, but the amount of time as a Bitcoin asset has been on the open market, we have got a lot of profitable days. 98.5% are profitable days holding Bitcoin, which is unbelievable in itself, right? In its small history that it's already had, that is showcasing a good sign. And for me, as I've talked about it before, it kind of gears you up for the fact that, well, maybe the stability of Bitcoin might become the entire rock of the digital asset world. So maybe we might not get a mental bull market, but overall, a slow progressive move up as the percentage levels will show, because some people do have some crazy price predictions. Obviously, moving on to price predictions, this is like a forecast tool here on the Bitcoin Pro Magazine Pro. And you got obviously Hal Finney talking about 10 million. Obviously, I think that was back in the early days. And then we've got ARK, who I really don't care about. Like, obviously, Cathie Wood, in my opinion, her opinion is shit. But they're always going to get people that will talk about some silly numbers for Bitcoin and certain numbers, right? But when we talk about those as percentage scales, it isn't that crazy when you think about it. And I know it sounds daft talking about it now, but in maybe 2030, you might well find that, well, if Bitcoin moves like 27% in a calendar year and it's already sitting at 200K, that's a big move in terms of dollar value. It may not be in terms of the relationship between the dollar and the Bitcoin price, but it's still pretty big. So you've got to be somewhat mindful of it. And this is quite like, it's older information from 2021, but you can see how the market capitalization of a lot of these assets are pretty big. So yeah, it could be very, very interesting to see where we go. Now, one thing that is giving us a data that is very interesting, obviously the growth effect essentially. So the compound annual growth rate, so the CAGR. Now, this over time progressively will get lower. And even today, in today's market, we are currently at what, 40, 50% growth, annual growth rate, which isn't bad really when you think about it. But I think over time, this will just get lower and lower and lower. And that's where it's interesting. We're in a bull market and it's doing that. So it'll be interesting to see where we go. But over time, if you annualize that over the next 20 years, if it stays at 50%, that's a mental gain. But I think that will definitely drop. And I think more and more people are still looking at Bitcoin, but ultimately they're only looking at it because they've been burnt by altcoins. And that's a matter of fact. I think a lot of my members in my Patreon, link below, by the way, if you're interested in joining the Discord and stuff, have been burnt and wrecked by, broken promises on altcoins. And obviously Bitcoin then becomes a wealth tool. The idea is to stack as many sats as possible and to grow your monies and using Bitcoin as that wealth vehicle, similar to gold, similar to other assets you may have. And when we compare this to the likes of the S&P 500, it becomes very, very important. But that as a 4-year growth rate is ridiculously good. But I do think over time, yes, that will slash and slash and slash. But I'm going to tell you a little secret. The S&P 500 is 6% when you factor in inflation. 6%. That's pretty good still in a dominant market that has been up only since literally its inception pretty much. And to obviously prove that to you, this is it. So at the minute, since its inception, I can read now, it's approximately 9.8%, 6% after inflation, which is the standard growth rate of the S&P 500, which is phenomenal, really, when you think about it. So when you talk about like the annual returns and we talk about it over a period of like 25 years or 20 years or whatever, 5 years, let's be honest here. For you to invest in an asset that's in the stock market, that's good. Bitcoin's 50% at the minute, and that will eventually get lower and lower and probably will go similar sort of tune to this. And it just absolutely staggers me that people turn their nose up at these sort of returns. It's like, all right, it's, for me, this is my opinion of it. I'm using Bitcoin and cryptocurrency assets to make more money faster, right? And then I will diversify that profit into, say, my stocks and shares ISA, into index funds, which is tax-free, earning a return, making money. Dividend stocks as well, tax-free, making return, yield on costs and over time. So for me, it's about having many wealth pots as possible, but main one is obviously cryptocurrency. Why would you turn your nose up at something as obvious as this? The data is there. It's crazy data, by the way. So yeah, don't turn your nose up at it. So when we do look at the likes of Bitcoin, right, and we talk about, is this going to be the last ever big boy cycle? And that's the funny thing, right? When we talk about some of these price ranges, and well, even from today's price, right this second, right, even if we're going to go from, say, 66K, and we're going to do, say, 100% move, as I've said before, right? That is $133,000 from today's price, right? And again, I've talked about it before in previous markets. What if, right, we do, say, a massive return of up to like 250K, say, right? And we do like a 3x, give or take. Obviously, not financial advice, may not happen, who knows, right? Obviously, from the low to the high, it's going to look a lot more. But from today's market price right now, to some people, that is nowhere near enough. And I fully understand why. You need to be in early for Bitcoin to make money. But this is why I'm saying to people, look at other things and look to try and, accumulate that wealth via profit elsewhere, because you're going to make money, hopefully. But you got to look at the BTC pair. Again, if you have no idea, comment, right? So what I'm thinking is, yes, we may well go to, say, 250K. Will BlackRock and all those want to have a horrendous bear market of, say, a 60% move down to 100K? That's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot of people. That's where the grey area is. So we may not have those crazy cycles in the future. We may well be up only, but we may not have those monstrous corrections. Remember, the S&P 500 has like 20 to 30% corrections, but they don't happen every couple of weeks. They happen over periods of like a decade. It's crazy. Obviously, the last decade's been a bit mental with obviously COVID and stuff, but when we talk about actual crashes, they're few and far between. Whereas with crypto, it happens every 2 years. When we talk about markups, distribution, markdown, reaccumulation of cycle phases. So when we talk about this 4-year cycle narrative, will, as I say, big money, institutional money, wealth, and people trying to preserve wealth want to have a 60-50% move. That's the grey area. That's the area we have no idea. But what we do know is, as Bitcoin goes higher, the returns and percentage returns are going to get lower. Everyone forgets about this big boy number here. We talk about in trading, size matters, right? It fucking does matter, because I could have like a $1 million in my account and make 3%, and I'll be really happy with that. Where someone will have like, $30 and make 3% and be very, very unhappy. You're not going to see the gains. Bitcoin's already had it. Your goal is to kind of find something that will give you Bitcoin. Simply that. Or USD to then put into Bitcoin at the lowest dollar cost average, whatever it may be. This is why Solana's doing very well. It's created millionaires from like fucking meme coins. This is why runes may well be, not financial advice, the next best thing to grow your Bitcoin as that ecosystem starts developing and growing. There's so many factors. This is why I'm saying to people, buy your altcoins where dominance is high, when the total 3/BTC is starting to show signs of change. It's easier said than done, but ultimately your goal is to get as much Bitcoin as possible, because I think Bitcoin's going to overshine a lot of things. That's my personal opinion. I think a lot of altcoins are a bit wishy-washy. They're a bit shit. Some of them will do well. You'll make money in short periods of time. But will it be everlasting? Because let's talk about something very obvious. A lot of these coins are pretty much dead. Yeah, they're up a lot more versus that was the early adoption phase. But ultimately, not many, is there? Let's be honest. There's three obvious ones there. Like Bitcoin, obviously, you got like some Litecoin, XRP, Ethereum, Dogecoin, right? Everything below that, you could probably argue, have either gone really high and died, right? That's the look at Tether. Tether back in those days was literally that madness. So yeah, you got to look at that as a factor. So when we talk about altcoins, a lot of them will die because most of them are just cash grabs. And when we even talk about, say, like even in 2022, February 2022 here, which is like when things were starting to really cool off, this has changed still over the course of time, where certain things have not done as well. Cardano's a lot lower. Solana's doing pretty well versus, what it has done in the past in terms of market capitalization, because it's done well. XRP is kind of still floating around. Obviously, Luna went to zero. Polkadot's doing terrible. You've still got a couple of meme coins in here. There's some absolute random coin like Cosmos. I don't even know where Cosmos is right now. Chainlink has struggled. Tron has done much better. Algorand is like on the second or third page now. There's so many here. Obviously, FTX. Yeah, obviously. Decentraland. Where's Decentraland nowadays? It's absolutely madness. So this is why you need to pick your winners well, and understand that there is cycle narratives here, but not everything will go up. And the bottom line is, you're going to find that everything will gravitate back to Bitcoin at certain points, which already is happening. Dominance is high, but there will be a little period of time where things will change. And it'll be really good when it does happen, but not everything will return. So when we talk about diminishing returns, we talk about that. We have to talk about, well, the BTC pairs. The BTC pairs over time show that Bitcoin is king, and this is key. Even Ethereum, in the might of the markets, in terms of value, was all the way up here at certain points. Now it's all the way down here. It's had bull cycles and bear markets, obviously, but this may well go up here to certain points where it was nowhere near as high as it was in the previous cycles, but actually then come back down. To showcase this as well, the Ethereum.D. This is a dominance of Ethereum. It's just pretty much the same chart, but in percentage levels, right? We're making a new low right now. That's a problem. Why is it so important? Because people are looking elsewhere. These charts will do well in short bursts, but they won't do well forever. So you've got to be very, very, very mindful of that, right? So this is why I say to people, sometimes it's just better off buying Bitcoin. Yeah, your altcoins will make quick flash cash in certain points. You've got to be clever. The market will humble you. So when we talk about market cycles, there's probably always going to be a cycle narrative between liquidity cycles and the financial economic system where gold will do well, certain things will do well. There'll be certain things where Bitcoin will do well and altcoins will do well. But it's all about time. Time's king. And I think a lot of people are just expecting or in that mind frame or mindset that we're just going to get rich off a bull cycle. Probably people are just missing the obvious. Size matters in Bitcoin. Have as much Bitcoin as possible because ultimately that's the one that maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, doesn't get the crazy bear markets and actually preserves wealth. Hopefully. Oh dear. If you want more of my content, feel free to jump in Patreon. Or if you want to learn more about investing, check out Learning Crypto. There's a video that I'm recommending here for you to watch. Yeah, have a good day.